So, it's done. I have in my hands here Waldeinsamkeit, which is not a laborious tome of epistemology, and thank goodness for that. Those who have been waiting for me to produce such a book will have to wait a little bit longer, but I can't really apologize for that, because what I have here is more personal, more textural, and I hope more personally meaningful than further efforts to contort myself into the right angles of academic language would have been. That is not to say that it's unphilosophical. I don't know if I'm really capable of being unphilosophical. Even when I was writing guides for computer games, I wound up shoehorning some philosophy in there. Oh, the blurb might help. Waldeinsamkeit, the feeling of being alone in the woods. It's a German word. It doesn't really translate directly into English. But going on. Isolation is a varied state of being. It is many sights, sounds, and textures, each of them highly individual. Through the poems and prose of Waldeinsamkeit, Carruth explores the state and space of loneliness, how we become immersed in it, what we may find and feel there, and the process of restoring our connections to other people and to ourselves. That was one of the most awkward parts of the book to write. There's just something very odd about writing about your writing. I've provided a link to the Lulu order page. Now, this is going to be available through Amazon, brick-and-mortar stores, the Kindle store, the Apple store. It's got its own website on the way. There's an audiobook in the works as well. And I am going to be playing with some really, really fun stuff with XML ebooks with embedded media coming down the line. But some of that's just going to take a lot of time and work on my part. And some of it is going to involve some obnoxious delays via distribution chains. And I've been dragging my feet on this long enough. So I'll let you know when it's available through those outlets and when those other formats become available. But if you can't wait, there's the link. Now, the rest of this video is a bit of ramble about the book itself, my feelings about it, the writing process, what have you. And feel free to stick around. You might find it entertaining. Otherwise, I look forward to comment and discussion on Waldeinsamkeit. And if those of you who have snagged a copy or do snag a copy want to post videos discussing it or reading it out loud, very welcome. All right, cheers. I hope, or my hope, is that anyone who's felt alone will find something here that speaks to them. Anyone who's tried to connect to other people and failed, or tried to convey something and failed, or at least feel that they had. Waldeinsamkeit was very difficult to write. Some of the poems were technically challenging, but that's not really the sort of difficulty that I mean. It's more that there are some very dark memories in this book. And working on it meant revisiting those places. In some cases, some of the poems that took a little bit longer. It meant dwelling within them, living in them for months. And it's part of why I wanted to get the damn thing done, I suppose. I love reading some of these poems out loud. It's like falling into the mode, the cadence of a performance. I guess it's echoes of my theatrical background, particularly poems like Cat and 14 or Grudge. And Breaking Down is actually an excerpt from a play that I never got around to finishing. And one thing I absolutely forbade myself. Absolutely forbade myself. And this was tricky. Given how much prose there is in the book, but absolutely forbade myself from grabbing the reader by the shoulders and saying, "This is what the poem is about." I'm adamant in my belief that people will and should get different things from a poem, provided that they get something at all, which, again, I hope that they do. Talking with people about their reactions to the poems in this book has kind of borne that out. One of the artists in the book, Maureen Twist, read some of the early material with her friends. Now, this is in Norway. It's a different culture. Really wasn't prepared for the reactions. Some of the poems were just completely impenetrable for them. Ones that other readers got without any effort, and it wasn't just a language problem. But the flip side of that, some of the poems that I'd heard called too obscure were just plain as day to this Norwegian focus group. At this point, I've had readers from the US, Canada, Mexico, England, Ireland, Norway, Germany, Jordan, and Turkey. And it's fascinating to see how big and small a difference somebody's culture and background makes in how they react. For the most part, the reactions really are very individual. There's no real pattern from one country to the next. But for one thing, there is one difference. The poems that are most focused on grief, particularly grief relating to suicide, connect instantly for American audiences, but almost not at all for audiences from anywhere else. It's got me thinking that maybe there's either something particularly American about that kind of grief, or that there is a particularly American flavor of grief. It's certainly changed how I think about writing. I'm definitely going to be playing with these ideas in the future. That's back and forth between prose and verse. I wanted to write a book of poems, but knew up front that there are problems there. Most people really don't go out of their way to read poetry, and very few people seem to have an authentic passion for it, even avid readers. But the funny thing is that I've noticed that even though poetry readers per se are kind of few and far between, it seems that once people are approached by it, everybody seems to enjoy poetry. It's kind of like, it's like the girl that everyone's afraid to ask out, but if they walk up to you and they ask, then it's okay. So I wanted to kind of write a book of poetry that did that was the girl walking up to you and asking you, instead of you having to figure out how to break the ice. I wanted to write a book of poetry that people who don't usually like poetry could get into. I wanted to create some inroads, be as inviting as possible. Many classical poets included little bits of prose before a poem, and that's where I got started, but those bits of prose kept growing. I think I might have overdone it. I spend almost 20 pages throughout the book apologizing to the reader for the fact that they're reading what I have to say. But in all fairness, I think that is a fairly authentic recreation of trying to have a conversation with me. You know, it's funny. I want people to relate to this stuff, to get something personal and enjoyable from reading it. But at the same time, I'm always surprised when they do. I suppose I'm always surprised when I succeed.